I got a text from a couple friends of mine asking me how I felt about Biden winning the election, or at least being the projected winner of the election. And my response to that was, yay. If you're looking for, a textbook definition of the term bittersweet, I can rightfully say that that's where I'm at right now. Like, his Biden winning has been a bittersweet feeling for me, because on one hand, I am happy that come January 20th, we will never have to really talk about Donald Trump ever again, hopefully. And I'm fully prepared to shift my criticisms from Trump to Biden should he do anything that I feel, is not right. But right now, spirits are high, and I think people are more celebrating the fact that Trump lost than them celebrating the fact that Biden won, And I also think that there are a lot of people who are celebrating the fact that there's a Democratic president, as opposed to really just being, really excited about the candidates, that we have seen, right? They're not really necessarily, everybody dancing in the streets isn't dancing because they love Biden. A lot of people who are dancing in the streets are dancing because they hated Trump. A lot of people who are dancing in the street are dancing because we have a Democratic president, or we will have a Democratic president. And now they're hoping to flip the Senate. So it's not necessarily what things seem. And this episode is going to be about, let's challenge how things appear, and we start breaking it down. Okay, I really want to start breaking things down as far as, let's look at how things appear and then start, dissecting them and finding truth behind that. The media has this way of taking things that appear one way and then projecting them to the rest of us to mean what they want it to mean. And if you're not mindful of that, if you're not conscious of that, they do have a tendency to they will skew your perception of reality. It's not they will. That's what they do. That is their job, to manipulate and bend and shape people's perspectives, so you stop thinking for yourself and you start thinking and acting and behaving the way they have conditioned you to behave. So the way you counter that is with the truth. That's the only way. Right? And you force yourself to take a step back and look at everything from an objective perspective. Objectivity is important. Empathy is important. Putting yourselves in other people's shoes is important. And that's what I'm going to attempt to try to do today. Just speak truth, right? Speak truth to power. Okay, so first things first. Why is my feeling of Biden, becoming president, being the president-elect, why is it a bittersweet feeling? Why am I not just simply elated? As you could probably glean from previous episodes, I've always sort of been against, one, the two-party system, two, career politicians, and three, I'm wary of the media and how they shape our perception of reality. So it's bittersweet because on one end, like I said, you don't have to really talk about Trump anymore. And in the opposite end, you kind of have to start to worry about, okay, so what is a Biden presidency? What does a Biden presidency look like? Okay. Now, you might be wondering, well, why am I worried about what a Biden presidency will look like? And I will share my concern. But I want to first start with why it was important. It is important to no longer have Trump on our airwaves, on a continuous basis. Okay, so first things first. I overheard my husband on the phone with one of his family members, and they asked him who I voted for and why. And I don't like when people don't ask me questions about things that are pertaining to me rather. because they're not going to get the answer. If you want to know why I did something, you ask me, right? Because I know why I did something, and I'll be able to think about the question and really process it before giving you an answer. If you ask somebody else what I think, they're going to tell you what they think I think. And that's not the same thing. And so I overheard my husband telling her, Joe voted for Biden because she thinks that Trump is racist. After he got off the phone, I checked him on that. I said, first of all, that's not why I voted for Biden. And when you say that, you lead people to think that me thinking that Trump is racist, somehow in my mind, I then think that Biden is not racist. And that's absolutely not true. And when I use the term racist, I don't mean it even in a derogatory, I can't even say the word, pejorative way, right? I mean it in the sense of like, it's just descriptive, right? If you are a white male in this country who was born in the 1940s, which I think both of these guys are or were, right? And lived through American history and the civil rights movements and all of this stuff leading up to today, 2020, right? And you're a male, right? And white, okay, you are going to come through that time period with a particular mindset, with a mindset of the white race is superior, is supreme. It's not necessarily their fault, right? Because think about the media, think about how people of color are presented even now on television right now. Roll that back to the 40s, to the 50s, to the 60s, to the 70s, right? And think about how both these individuals, both Biden and Trump, were socialized to perceive not only themselves as white males in America, but also other people and people of color, right? Like, people want to go back in time, and look through and the media and say, well, or movies, right, from like the 80s and say, well, this was really sexist. Even not even that far back. Like, I remember 30 Rock. I forget her name, but the lady who created the show with the glasses, I can see her face. I just can't think of her name. But she was like, they had to go back. She apologized and was like, we had to go and take out some scenes that had blackface on it. And there were some jokes in there that were inappropriate, right? And even the Chappelle show, they had gone out and they went back and deleted Ron Jeremy from, the Chappelle show because of, obviously, he's being now charged with like sexual assault, right? So that's just modern. Like, like there's some stuff like even Key and Peele. If you never watched that show, like go and watch Key and Peele, like their first season. I couldn't even get through the first like few episodes because I was like, whoa, this shit is offensive. But it's offensive when you listen to it now with modern ears, right? With everything that we know now, going back and listening to some of the stuff that they were making jokes about, it's very cringeworthy, right? Go back to your tweets, okay? Go back to your tweets from like your Facebook account from like when Facebook first started and read the shit that you were saying. You sounded like a complete idiot, okay? I can even go back to earlier episodes of my own podcast and be like listen to some of the stuff that I said and I'm like, whoa, why would you say that? And cringe at that, okay? As society progresses, we look back and go, that was fucking stupid. I can't believe we thought like that. I can't believe we behaved that way, okay? So Biden and Trump grew up in a generation where doctors recommended cigarettes, okay? Right? Like, I'm making jokes, but there's truth here, like legit. Go and look up what was on the television in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and how people of color were portrayed, right? how white males were presented, how white women were portrayed. So there's no way you live through that unless you're an extremely remarkable, conscious, aware human being. There's no way you live through those many decades. Okay, where younger people can kind of look around and be like, all right, that's fucked up. But that's because we haven't been indoctrinated for as long as these dudes have. Okay, so go back, go on, I don't know, Amazon Prime or Netflix, find some old movies and watch that shit. And now imagine from birth. Okay. And not only that, you're being raised, these two men were being raised by parents who were raised on even worse stuff than that. Okay. I'm sorry. There's no way you live through those periods in time as a white male in America and not come out looking at people of color, looking at women, looking at people in other countries in a certain type of way. That's the problem with programming. And I've said this before. Take anybody, right? I take you right now. I take your consciousness and I transfer it to, let's say, futuristic, right? So I've got access to a time machine and a consciousness transference machine, right? And I take your consciousness and I transfer it into Donald Trump's body in whenever the fuck he was born, right? And excuse my language, I'm still working on not cursing, and then you now are raised. Your memories of who you are today are wiped. Okay, so you just wake up. It's like a dream, right? You don't realize that you're dreaming. So you wake up, you open your eyes, you're now Donald Trump. Okay. And so you have the same mom that he had, the same father that he had, the same opportunities that he has, the same experiences that he has, every single thing exactly the same. You're just a consciousness with no memory of who you are now or who you were in the future, right? Going through these experiences, and you think that's you. Eventually you will become the person that is Donald Trump now. It is inevitable. Any single person. And so that's why at the core of it, and I've said this, my issue with Donald Trump is not even necessarily something that's personal to him as a person. My issue has been with what he encourages and what he emboldens. And more importantly, once again, it's not even about him. It's about having somebody like him in the limelight and the psychology behind that and what that does for society or to a society when that personality is basically magnified and amplified and then projected to the world. That is dangerous to me. So I didn't vote for Trump because I think he's racist. That to me is almost insulting, right? I didn't vote for him because I think that both of them have been raised on racist ideologies that are deeply rooted in this country and stem back beyond even their lifetimes. You get what I mean? Like this shit is deeper than just the two of them. So if both Biden and Trump hold the ideas or the perception of other people that they hold, it's not necessarily their fault. Right? This is a deeply rooted issue. It's a systemic issue. That's not the fault of one person. Right? It is a problem with America at its core. If you think about the fact that, and it's not just the media, right? It's also religion, right? It's also this ideology of we are the chosen ones. So let's go to another person's country, right? And conquer them and say that their gods are savages or their gods are demons or they are heathens and we are going to impose our culture over them, right? That's not something that's unique or caused by Biden or Trump. There's a deeply systemic, being the operative word here, issue in this country that have a lot of contributing factors to it, right? And you can even trace this, that mindset, all the way back, if you want, to the difference between hunting and gathering, right? And then agriculture. Some have argued that at one point, when humanity shifted from basically relying on the land, right, where man was at the, what's the word I'm looking for here? Mankind depended on nature to provide food when mankind hunted. So they would kind of just move, right, from place to place, never really settled in any place, in any given place. They would follow the herd and they would hunt. Yeah. So that was humanity at first. But then what happened was, when humanity shifted from hunting and depending on Mother Nature to provide, to dominating nature, which was what agriculture was, right? So once mankind, when humanity shifted from the hunter-gathering, right, mode of survival to agricultural mode of survival, then we saw the development of, okay, people saying, okay, now this is my land. Okay, now I need somebody to protect my land because people are coming to like steal my shit, right? This is my land. These are my crops. These are my cattle. I no longer have to go out and forage, right? I no longer have to depend on nature to provide for me, right? So when mankind, I'm getting deep here, okay, but you guys need to hear me out. It's deeper than this. So when mankind shifted from depending and relying on nature and to survive, to dominating nature through agriculture, right, planting seeds instead of foraging, then they needed land, right? Okay, then people started to say, okay, well, this is mine. Then the idea of property became a thing, right? And then the idea of, wait, that person has a property that I want, right? But before even that, people would, okay, this is my house, this is my farm. Other people are foraging, looking for food. Then they come across this person's farm and they're like, yeah, hey, you've got cows and sheep and just corn growing. I'm going to take your shit, right? And so the people would come in and rob people. And then these bands of businessmen, I mean, if that's what you want to call it, like, call it what it was. Those band of businessmen came and said, you know what, let's offer protection to these people who want to, set up farms, right? But they don't want to get killed from somebody raiding their farm and taking their stuff. So we will protect you, right? We will protect your property, but then you have to pay us money. That's when government came along. You see how this starts? That's government. So then people decided, okay, fine. Instead of us hunting and gathering, we will stay, and instead of relying on nature and worshiping nature, right? Man decided or began to start sort of, dominating nature, taming nature. And then these groups of people came and said, thank you for taming nature and for planting all these, this corn and maize and for raising these buffalo and these sheep and these cows and everything. I'm going to go ahead and kill you and take that. Well, then that kept happening. And then some opportunists looked and said, well, if more and more people are doing this, and obviously they're going to need protection. If you pay me money, give me a percentage of what you're, earning, percentage of what you have, I will protect you. And then those small groups of business people, right, of entrepreneurs, right, innovators who looked and saw an opportunity and capitalized on it. And I'll say that again, they saw an opportunity and they capitalized on it. They were the predecessors to government that we have now. And then that governance turned into, chiefs, and that turned into, kings, and then that turned into, presidents and all of that. So everything you see now, stems from that shift of humanity, that evolution of humanity from hunting and gathering to agriculture, right? And then that idea of ownership of land, which was not that wasn't at the beginning when mankind would hunt and gather, right? So you can't believe that you own the land if you're just, trying to forage and feed off of it. That concept of, okay, this is mine now. I own this, and I need somebody to protect it. That was something that evolved as humanity evolved, right? And so when I say to you that a lot of the deeply rooted issues that we have stems from beyond, even modern civilization. It goes all the way back. You really have to be mindful of that. You really have to let that kind of resonate with you, let that, kind of sink in. So then you have, so you're no longer hunting gathering. Now you have your own farm. And then what's next? Okay, so you're protecting me for my property. But let's say my land is not fruitful. Then you realize, well, there might be other people out there who also have land, right? So let me go over there. And if they haven't decided to have somebody to protect them, right, then let's go and steal their shit. Right? So then that's when you started having the raiding and the pillaging and right? All of that happening. And then after, people were like, that's just human evolution. So the people who got raided and pillaged were like, wait, they have people that are, protecting them. We need to form our own defenses. And that's how it all sort of evolved. And then one group decided, evolved, religion to control people, to keep people from looking at their neighbor's yards and going, hey, you have corn, I'm just going to go kill you and take your stuff. Religion was introduced, and it said there's this man in the sky, or there are these gods in the sky that, are watching you, and they're invisible and they're all powerful, and they can strike you with lightning and things of that nature if you misbehave. So stop stealing people's shit, right? In order for everybody to keep what they had, and in order for the people, those entrepreneurs who decided to basically run a protection agency, which is what became to be known as what we have now, governance rather, they also needed a weapon, a tool, in order to keep people civil, to not go and steal, to make their jobs easier, to make it so that they don't go and steal from somebody else. So they needed some invisible force that was going to stimulate fear in other people and also get them to, not to basically follow their ordinance, follow their law, right? And so then religion was born, right? And then from religion, you now start to get the idea of, okay, whose God is greater than the other, right? So that's competition, right? So yes, our gods, you will punish us if we rob from other people who also worship our gods, right? But I still want to steal, right? So maybe we should go and find other people who don't worship our God, and then we won't get punished by our gods if we can, overthrow them. And if we defeat them, then that means that their gods aren't also powerful, or aren't as powerful as our God, and therefore their God is not really a real God, and we also get to steal their stuff. Okay, so then that's where warfare started, right? And it evolved, and it kept evolving, and then you end up with the colonizers, the colonies coming here. And basically, if you read the writings from when the colonizers arrived here, right, and they interacted with the Native Americans and they infected them with smallpox and things of that nature before they even arrived, they chose to see that as divine providence, as the fact that their God, right, the Christian God, has dominated these Native American people, and that allowed them to feel good about taking these people's lands, and wherever they went, if they were able to, just from sheer brutality or consequence and exposure to viruses, they were able to take that as affirmation that their God, quote God, was more powerful than the people who they just killed or plundered or whatever. And so that then allowed them to take their land, right? And if you believe that your God is superior to their God, you also then believe that your people are superior to their people. What does that eventually devolve into? Well, that's where you start getting the idea and the concept of European supremacy, which then becomes white supremacy, and the concept of racism, right? So, like I said, whether or not Trump or Biden are racist, like that's a given. My issue with Donald Trump was not even personal to him. My issue with Donald Trump, the persona, was a person like that who bullies people, who, insults other nations, who behaves in an uncivil manner should not be on television, because I understand the power that the media has over people's perceptions and over people's behavior. That was what it was. Both of them could be the exact same person. They literally could be clones of each other. But if one person is acting in a way that I personally feel could be detrimental to civilization as a whole, I don't think that you take that person and you broadcast them to the rest of the world. I have chronicled this. You guys have seen this. You've seen that when the protests happened in the United States over George Floyd, you then saw similar protests also happening across the world over George Floyd. And then it kind of turned into people then protesting against police brutality in general. And then women are marching, because women were marching in the United States. Now you see women marching in Poland, right? If you take a behavior and you highlight that behavior, and then you broadcast it not only nationally, but also internationally, people across the world will also emulate that behavior. And that was what was most dangerous to me about Donald Trump. It was what his behavior emboldened. He is what he is. But when you take somebody like that and you broadcast it for 4 years and you show this behavior, there are people who look at that, and you see a business person who we all know has filed numerous bankruptcies. We all know has figured out a way to bend the law so that it benefits him. We know that he basically lives off his debt. You amplify that. What are people going to ask? Why should I work hard? This guy has never worked a day in his life. He lives off his debt. He has figured out a way to game the system so that he benefits. And you know what? Good for him. If that's how he wants to live his life, good for him. But if you want society to follow the rules that govern us, right? Because there's one thing that people keep forgetting. Okay, there is a thin line. There is a thin line between civility, civilization, and anarchy. There is a thin line. You don't take an individual who basically has shown time and time again that he does not believe in following rules. In fact, he will bend the rules to fit him, to benefit him. You don't take that person with those kind of tendencies and amplify that to the world, because people are going to see that and emulate that. You're basically telling people civilization, right? It's like they said with the noblemen in France and things of that nature. They said that all these like rules, like how they're supposed to eat and the fork and, forks and knives and the way they dressed and the way they spoke and having tea at a particular point in time. All of these stupid little rules that were created for European noblemen, was done in order to tame them, right? Laws are there to tame the bestial nature of mankind. I'll say that again. Laws exist. Laws are there to tame the bestial nature that is in all of mankind. Right? Law in itself is not powerful. What's powerful is the belief in the law and what it stands for. Okay? And laws exist, rules exist in order to keep us civil. So when you take a person who's lawless, even though he yells law and order, he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand that his behavior is lawless. And he doesn't understand that by behaving recklessly, amorally, and he is being amplified internationally, what he's doing across the country and across the world is saying, emulate this behavior. He may not even be conscious of it. I don't think he's conscious of this. He's definitely not conscious of it. He's a narcissist. He's literally, I keep saying he's mentally handicapped because he is physically unable and incapable of thinking about anybody but himself. That's the opposite of an empath. So I can watch him as an empath and go, this guy is incapable of putting himself in other people's shoes. So he's not even aware of what repercussions his actions will have, not only in the United States, but on young people and on people across the world. You cannot reward this behavior with another 4 years. Society would not survive this. And you might think that I'm exaggerating. You might think that I am, overreacting. I am telling you right now, society would not have been able to survive him being projected on international and national television for another 4 years. It's a very thin line between civility and anarchy. We've seen this shit play out. We saw that all summer. We grapple with that within ourselves. I've talked to you guys about, the devil and God. Obviously I don't believe in the devil, or I'm sorry, either the devil or the God that is described in the Bible. I don't. But, there are stories there that you can kind of learn from, right? And the question that Bertrand Russell asked is, if God was supposed to be all good, then where did evil come from? And my response to that is, if we're running on the premise that the biblical God is real, obviously he doesn't believe he's real, and neither do I. But let's just assume that he is. That means that evil also had to come from God. So it's something that existed in God. And its evil is also something that exists in us. What keeps a society together is our belief in morality, our belief in that if you're a bad person, bad things will happen to you. Okay? It's those two little stupid things. And some people believe, actually, that there is some, big daddy in the sky that's watching us that is going to make sure, he sees us when we're sleeping. He knows when we're awake. And he knows if we've been good or bad, so be good for goodness sake. By God, I've said this before, God is just Santa for adults. Okay, but it keeps us in line and it keeps us civil. And there are a lot of people, I've literally heard people say this. Well, I'm a Christian. I'm a good person because I'm a Christian. Okay, that right there is telling. There are people who are out there saying that the only reason why I believe in being good to your neighbor and being kind to your neighbor and, loving others as I love myself is because a book told me to do things. And those same people believe that a person who chooses not to believe in the God in their book is somehow incapable of loving other people. And to me, my response to that is, if you need a book to tell you to be a decent human being to other people, you need to pause and ask yourself, why? Because there are atheists who don't believe in the God of the Bible and just believe that you should be a good person because that's just the right thing to do. They believe their religion is empathy. Do unto others as, you want others to do unto you. And they don't demonize people because they don't believe in a book, the way Christians demonize people because they don't believe in the God of their book. Right? Loop that a couple of times so it sinks in, right? If you need something outside of yourself, if you need something external to behave in a civil way, you got to pause and ask yourself, why is that? And what I'm saying is that there are a lot of people who need something outside of themselves in order to behave in a civil way. And for a lot of people, that is religion. For a lot of people, that is the law. For a lot of people, that is the presence of cameras, the presence of police. For a lot of people, that is the media and its programming. These are facts. These are absolute total facts. You know that there are people, if there wasn't a camera and they had to get going and the light is red, and the light saying stop means you have to stop in order to let other people go through. But if they look and they don't see a camera and they don't see a cop and the light is long red, there are people out there who will run that shit. Okay? And that's why a lot of the time, if you run a light without being mindful of the fact that there's a cop there, even if there was nobody else waiting alongside of you, you will get pulled over and you'll get a ticket, because it's not about you, cutting somebody off. It's about, this is the law, behave in a civil manner. Your behavior is being punished. It's not simply because you broke the law. It's that you're behaving in an uncivil manner. We have rules. In order for a society to exist and be civil, in order for civilization to occur, we have rules and you have to follow the rules. That's it. You don't take a person who his whole entire life has broken the rules, has broken the law, you look at this guy, look at everything he stands for and everything that he's done. The countless bankruptcies. The majority of us are afraid to file for bankruptcy the one time. This guy has filed for bankruptcy multiple times. He uses the law to his advantage. Yes, you can look at that and say, okay, I respect that. And maybe if he wasn't, on the international, limelight, I could look at him and go, okay, I could, this is an interesting person that I could probably learn from. I've said that actually on my podcast, learn from him, not obviously the crazy shit that he does, but there's certain things that he does where it's like, he is a fighter. You have to respect that, but you don't take that. If you want society to survive, if you want people to follow the rules, you don't magnify a person who continuously breaks the rules. And you also, more importantly, whether it's constructed or not, whether it's artificial or not, you don't reward such a person with another 4 years of a presidency. You don't do that because that destroys society. Like, I don't know. It sounds dramatic, but it's true, because a lot of us have grown up and we've been raised to think that if you're a bad person and you do bad things happen to you. I'm sorry. If this dude had gotten elected or reelected, I would have come on here and been like, okay, well, fuck everything. Clearly there's no karma. Clearly you could just live your life, not give a fuck about other people. Excuse my language. I'm passionate right now. That is one of my flaws. It is what it is. But you can live your life and live the way you've lived. I literally actually recorded an episode, I think last year. It was literally called No Karma for Donald Trump. Because I looked at this dude's life and I'm just like, man, how do you live like this? And just flout the rules and just be a total dick and nothing bad ever happens to you. And I even said that even if for some reason, right before he turns 80, karma finally catches up with him, still for 80 years, he's got to be a dick. And nothing bad happens to him. How? This dude got coronavirus and then jumped back up like a weed and was talking shit a week later. How? And I still think there's things to be, to be learned from all of that, and maybe down the road I'll extrapolate on that. But, as a society, there are people watching, there are children watching, children who are relearning relearning, because I do believe in reincarnation. So children who are relearning what the rules are in this reality. If there's no consequence for you being the way this guy has been, then what you're telling the rest of us is, those invisible things called rules, those invisible things called civilization, those invisible things that basically keep us civil, the things that allow us to live in a country where you don't have to put a huge wall around your house. It's because other people are also, they believe they're held, whether they're conscious of it or not, they are restrained. The bestial nature of mankind is restrained by the belief that we have in law, by the belief that we have in, religion, right? You have to kind of have these things in place to keep mankind tamed. And that was why I voted against Trump. I wasn't voting for Biden. I was voting against what I felt Trump would do if you allow him, and not even just him like actively, but if you allow this person to still behave the way he behaves without any checks, without any system of, balance, without any consequence, you do set a bad example for that. And I said all this stuff. I was having a conversation with one of my friends this weekend about all of this. And before I was even able to give an example of that, what she said to me was, you know what, you're right. I've been watching and I've been seeing people just like normally, when you drive, on the highway, we have shoulders. The shoulders are open, but nobody goes during traffic and goes, okay, I see traffic. The shoulders are open. I don't feel like, sitting in traffic, so I'm just going to drive along the shoulders. Okay? And I said that to her, and then she cut me off, and then she said, you know what, you're right. I've been seeing more and more people running red lights. I've been seeing more and more people driving on the shoulder. And I said, and so have I. And take this from me, from somebody who was born and raised in a country where people where people have lost faith in the law. That's dangerous. Okay? So I grew up in Nigeria. My parents were wealthy. Okay? And we lived in a gated community, and our home was also gated. And in the front of our house, we also had a security guard. And our entire compound was encased. We had giant walls, right, all around our compound, right? And then on top of our walls, we had barbed wire and broken glass. Okay? You live in a country where you can, there's some people in some parts of this country that can leave their door unlocked, go to work, come home, and find their shit exactly where they left it. Okay? I come from a country where there's no middle class. It's just poor and rich. I was lucky enough to be born wealthy, born rich, okay? But you can't just leave your gate open. And more importantly, if people know that you're wealthy, if people know that they're rich, that you are rich, they will come and take your shit. Because the police are also corrupt. Because the military is also corrupt. Because the people know and have lost faith in law. And I can say that emphatically because my own father in 1995 was kidnapped from our home. Somebody paid off our security guard to leave the gates open. And the security guard came, while the security guard was gone, he left our gates open. They cut off our power, just our power. And armed robbers came into our compound and kidnapped my father, drove off with him at gunpoint. They put a gun in my face. I saw this happen at the age of 10. I know what I'm talking about. So as an immigrant who grew up and saw that happen, and I had to stay up all night thinking, I'm never going to see my father again. To watch a despot on television degrade people's belief in law, that to me is terrifying. That to me is terrifying. You don't amplify those kind of behaviors. You don't do that. You need to show people that there are consequences to your actions. You need to show people that if you break the law, there will be punishment. You have to show that in order for that line between civility and anarchy is maintained. That is what is the most dangerous thing about Donald Trump. We are raised to believe that no one is above the law, but yet you put on international television a guy who keeps breaking rules. He just lost. He refuses to concede. That's a problem. They're allowing a crisis of consciousness to really occur, where people are going to start looking around and thinking, wait, well, if he doesn't have to follow, these are the rules. Why isn't he following the rules? And if he's not following the rules, then why do I? Why do I have to follow the rules? That's dangerous. Okay. We have in Lagos, in where I grew up, right? I grew up in the suburbs of Lagos, right? Victoria Island. But outside of Victoria Island, which is a planned community, there is like the wild fucking West. Okay. We have power lights. I'm sorry, not power lights. We have, we have power lights too, but we have traffic lights. Nobody follows the lights. If somebody's got somewhere to go, they will just drive through that shit. Okay? Like, the lights are just there kind of as a suggestion. That is the thing that I'm afraid of, that scares me. Okay? There are some parts, I've seen this even in New York. There's some parts in New York when there's traffic, I've watched people just drive on fucking sidewalks just to get to where they're going. Okay? That is the kind of stuff that concerns me. And every once in a while, yes, there are some, like one or two people will do that. But when that becomes normative, that's a problem. Okay? Let's keep, I'm going to keep using Africa because I need you guys to understand. Like, this dude is running around talking about socialism, but he's not talking, but you need to hear a different perspective. Okay. So in Zimbabwe, right, inflation happened, and people all of a sudden, like, it was like trillions of dollars just to buy a loaf of bread or whatever it is, right? So then their money fell out of favor, and then they had to start using US dollars. Money right now is fiat. It's not backed by anything. It's not backed by gold. It's just a piece of paper. What gives it its strength right now is that people believe it's worth something. That's it. The belief of its value is what is basically keeping us above water right now. Period. That's all I have to say. Belief. And the moment people stop believing that piece of paper is worth anything, particularly if people start doubting the stability of the country that's supposed to back that legal tender, then that money becomes worthless. So I need you guys to really, really think about what I've been saying. Really let that sink in. Every time I say the word "let that sink in," I always think about, like, literally a sink is at the door knocking, and then somebody's like opening the door, and you got to let the sink in. Let that sink in. Everything that we have right now in this world is based on belief. Something intangible. But that's that line between civility, between civilization and all-out anarchy is belief right there. And it's very thin line. Very thin line. So for me, I guess to answer that question, I didn't vote for Biden. I voted against everything that I felt came with a Trump second term. What that does to society, what that does to people's perception of reality, and what that would do to our civilization, or at least the belief that we are civil beings, that we are civilized people. You don't reward that kind of behavior, because if you do, then you encourage it. Period. To me, it wasn't about a race issue. It wasn't about all of that, because now I'm about to drop some real facts. Here we go. Okay? We're going to speak some truth. And I can say all this stuff now because, elections are done. In the beginning of summer, Joe Biden came out and basically said, you're not black if you don't vote for me. And a lot of black people took offense to that because that's some racist shit to say. To assume that just because you're a Democrat, we're going to vote for you. And then to basically, I don't even have to explain why that's fucked up. It's just fucked up. And he was, of course, the presumptive nominee for the Democratic candidate. As soon as he said that literally that same week he said that, the following day, the media started showing videos of police brutality specifically against black people. Police brutality happens to all Americans. Okay? You hardly see the media report on it unless they're trying to amplify it for whatever purpose that suits them. So they started showing it. First, they showed that guy that got lynched. I don't remember his name. And then it was the George Floyd video thing. And then they amplified that. We have a police brutality issue in this problem. These are facts, right? In this country, rather. These are facts. And the media, when they need to, will focus on it. So they focused on that, amplified it. Then and I talked about this summer. Then came all the celebrities. They started retweeting the stuff. They started posting the videos. They were really going hard. And then black people, of course, this is an emotional thing. I still have the image in my head. I saw that. I remember that knee on that guy as he died. And we've seen this shit before. But ultimately, what I'm trying to say was it was all intentional. And so what happened? These are facts, guys. I'm always gonna tell the truth. It's gonna be uncomfortable. I don't fucking care. You need to hear it. They weaponized, and by they, I mean the Democratic Party and the mainstream media. They weaponized the plight and the pain of African American people in this country and their anger of all of the atrocities that they suffered repeatedly, continuously in this country, and their parents and their parents' parents. They amplified that, they weaponized that, and they put that on television, and they used it to drive people to protest. And then they sent people carrying backpacks and covering their faces, instigators dressed in all black, to go and amplify the anger with violence. And then you saw the looting. And then what did they do? Then they took that, and then the right-wing media put that on television. See, look, they're animals. And I know people who went and marched, and it was mostly peaceful until the nighttime. And there was bricks set up. You guys remember this? There was bricks set up in front of these stores. And they did the exact same thing happen in Hong Kong when the Hong Kong people were protesting. They said there was bricks that were set up. To amplify a narrative. So all of a sudden, I keep saying, my hand was forced in this election. My hand was forced, but it was. I had to do what I felt was most responsible. Right? Was my responsibility. Right? We see this. It's easy to blame each other. It's really easy to blame each other for a lot of what we're seeing today. I don't think that that's fair. I think that we are fighting against things that we're not even conscious what's going on. I saw on CNN that Rick Santorum was talking about how I think between 2016, 2020, 5% more black people voted for Trump than they did in 2016. And what Santorum said was that should show you the headways that Trump has made in the black community. And remember, I started this episode saying, what the media tends to do is you take things that appear one way on surface level, and then that's just what they give you. But that's not true. That's not the truth. That is not the same thing as the truth. The black people who did vote for him, for Trump, they didn't just do it because they like Trump. And that's what the media does not talk about. That's what these talking heads don't say. They just say, oh, this is what happened, and this is the reason why. For all the people who want to sit here and say, show proof, facts matter, these motherfuckers present opinions as facts, and then they skew the narrative to something that benefits them. I'll tell you why black people, the 5% more black people voted for Trump than they did for Biden, because I guarantee you within that 5% of people, there were black people who saw what the media did and were disgusted by it. We may not talk about it on social media. We do talk to each other about it. We may not talk about it on the news, but we do talk to each other about this, and we see this shit. And we discuss it, and we go, it's funny how literally the day after Trump made that gaffe on Charlemagne the God's podcast and said, you're not black if you don't vote for me. Right after that, this narrative started getting pushed. That was a protest vote. That was a vote to say, fuck you, Democrats, fuck you, Biden. We see what you're doing. We see what you're doing. It's funny how, honestly, you know what? I'm not even going to break it down. I'm just going to keep putting things on blast. Okay. Since we're on this topic, I'm going to keep talking. Okay. Black people have been demonized by the media. The reason why people hold the stereotypes that they have of black people, of black men, of black women, of black children, of Mexicans, of immigrants, of whatever group that they have characterized, of women in general, it's because of the media. And you could hear me and go, well, are you following in Trump's? Do you agree with Trump that the media is, biased and da-da-da-da-da? Are you agreeing with it? Yeah, if Trump says the sky is blue, it doesn't mean that the sky is red. And just because I agree with him that the sky is blue doesn't mean I agree with all the other shit that he does. At the end of the day, the media is biased, and not just the news. The media is responsible for the bias that a lot of people, a lot of Americans have. I spoke with someone today on Twitter who was a Trump supporter. What the media told us about Trump supporters repeatedly was that they were all Nazis, that they were all racists, that they were all rednecks, that they were all uneducated, that they were all trash. They linked Trump supporter to far-right extremists. That's what the left-wing media did. And then the right-wing media, I told you, I go and I watch that shit just to see what they're saying. It makes me uncomfortable, but I need to see how people on the right are also being programmed. If you watch Fox, Newsmax, OANN, flip the channel every once in a while. Be uncomfortable and watch to see what the media on the left is saying and telling them about you. You can't tell me that after watching 5 minutes of that, regardless of what side you sit, you're not going to end up, regardless of what side you watch, you won't end up feeling some type of way about the other side. It's like I said earlier, if I take my consciousness and I transfer it into the body of Donald Trump and they wipe my memory And from birth, I am programmed to believe something. I will end up believing that thing. If you sit down, you turn on Fox News. It's called programming, guys. I don't know how many times I have to say it. I'm going to keep saying it until look up the definition of programming. The human brain is a computer. It's an organic computer. If you sit down, you turn that shit on, you are programming yourself. So if you turn on the left-wing media, you're saying, this is what I want to be programmed. And I want these ideologies to be reinforced in my mind. If you turn on the right-wing media, same thing, just the opposite. So if you're talking to a Trump supporter and on Twitter, or I shouldn't even say talking because people can't even fucking talk to each other anymore. If you get into an argument with a Trump supporter, which is more appropriate on the media, they are operating under the premise that you are some sort of baby killer, frappe drinking or coffee drinking, person who hates our country, that's a socialist, that's, what's the other one, that worships Satan, like all these like crazy stuff, but who are like but if you go and watch Fox News, that's because that's what they're being programmed to think about us. The same way when you turn on CNN and you hear the way they show Trump supporters, some Trump supporters holding flags with the belly and, like the worst of them. And that's what they show. That's what you're going to think. Hello. The Trump supporter, quote, Trump supporter, which has become a pejorative term. I think I said it right this time. Pejorative? Anyway, derogatory term was an attorney. I'll say that again. The Trump supporter that I spoke with today, we had a discussion. It was not a debate. It was not an argument. Nobody was insulting each other. He was an attorney. I spoke with another one right before the election results had been announced. And it wasn't by a direct message. He just, I said something on Keith Olbermann's Twitter page. And then I got flooded with a bunch of people insulting me. And I was like, I don't have anything else to do. I'm waiting for the results. So I just started responding to people. If you insulted me, I blocked you. But if you spoke with me like a decent human being, I responded in kind. Thank you for your civility. Thank you for being civil. And, what this guy said was, a lot of us who support Trump, we're not racist. We're not bigots. And we don't always agree with everything that he says and does. In fact, a lot of the time we wish he wouldn't say and do these things because it just makes it easier for people to dislike him and subsequently dislike us. And I've said this on my own podcast. He makes it hard for people to support him because of his behavior. Why would you do that? You're doing your followers a disservice by acting like a prick. Because it makes other people who support you, who want you to do well, now have to defend your shitty behavior. But that's why that's why he's a narcissist. He can't think beyond that. It's not about, okay, I need to conduct myself in a particular way because I am a representative. I am a leader of the people who support me. Right? Don't give them fuel. If you want to win more people over, act like a decent human being, which he failed to do time and time again. And he said, we're not all racist. And that was Joe. That was like a light for me. Joe, pause, take a step back and listen. I voted for Biden. Not because I like Biden, but because I've already explained to you why. But also because I don't want somebody in power emboldening white supremacists. And also, I don't want a party in power. I don't want Republicans in power who keep promoting quote unquote Christian values, because I have a problem with religion. And I think church and state should be separated. Our founding fathers said that, intended that. But that's me. Okay? You can vote for somebody without liking them. I don't like Biden, and yet I voted for him. And I voted for the Democratic Party because we didn't really have any real tangible choices. Don't you think then that there's a percentage of people on the opposite end who also voted for Trump despite not liking him? Who also voted for Trump despite his behavior because it wasn't for them. Maybe it wasn't about him. And yes, they know that he emboldened white supremacists, but he also put a Christian judge on the Supreme Court. And to them, I'm not saying this is right. I'm saying to them, that good, in their mind, they see that as a good. Okay, filling the courts with conservative judges, to their mind, is good. When you have people on the left talking about defund the police without explaining what the fuck that means. Now, I like to keep an open mind, but even when they said that, I was like, are you out of your mind? What the hell does that mean? And so granted, they meant like reform the police. So then why didn't you say reform the police? Why would you say defund the police? People who are not far left extremists are going to look at that and go, what the fuck are you talking about? Yo, like, we need the cops. Like, we just don't have cops brutalizing people. That's a whole nother story. You know? So, but when you say defund the police and you give Fox News something to shine the camera on and then project to their leaders, to their listeners rather, to say, see, this is what the people on the left believe. They want anarchy. They want looting in the streets, right? They want disorder. They want chaos. They hate this country. When you have a senator saying that they believe in socialism, it's really easy for Fox News to shine the camera on that and say Venezuela, right? To say Cuba. That's exactly what the fuck happened. Hello? Left wing, right wing, same bird. I keep saying this. Left wing, right wing, same bird. Who's the bird and who's controlling the bird? Somebody said on Twitter, actually a few people are saying on Twitter, I can't believe 70 million Americans are racist. And other people jump on that bandwagon. In order for you to believe that, you would also have to believe that the 75 million people who voted for Biden are socialists. You know what I mean? Like, just because there's some people who believe in socialism, I believe that America should have more things that do equate to socialism, doesn't mean that those people represent all of the people who voted for Biden. I'm not saying there aren't people who voted for Trump simply because he spoke to them in the language of white supremacy. Okay? But that's not representative of all those people. That's not representative of the feelings of all those people. And some people who voted for him begrudgingly. They voted for him because of all the other things that he stood for, all the things that he did do. Are there white supremacists in the Republican right? Yes. Are there white supremacists in the Democratic left? Yes. I watched a couple interviews of these women in the Black Lives Matter park memorial, where this white guy, while he was celebrating Biden's win, he had taken a bunch of Biden-Harris posters and put it over the faces of the victims of police brutality. Now, this black lady walked up and started taking the posters down because to her, that's desecrating this memorial. And he ran up to her and was like, "What are you doing?" and got in her face and was prepared to fight her until a black man saw what was happening, ran up to her, told him to back down. Life is not black and white, guys. Okay? in my Keith Olbermann tweet where I said what I said, people just assumed, like I literally sat and read all these tweets where people were attacking me, like, well, where were you when people were like looting? Or no, that's not even what they asked. They were like, you were out there looting. And my response is, I was at home minding my own business. I did not go out during the protests. The fuck are you talking about? You're just assuming, right? You're assuming because I'm black that I was out there protesting, and then subsequently because the media on the right has told you that black people were looting, then all of a sudden you see my black skin and now you think I was out there looting. I was at home minding my own business, watching the shit on TV the same way you were. Take this block, okay? Life is not black and white. A bunch of other people were calling me a Democrat, you Dems, you libs. And I'm like, just because I'm speaking against the president does not make me a Democrat. Just because I'm speaking against the president does not make me liberal. But this is where we are now, where literally people are being programmed to think that life is just one or another. And they try to shove you into any box, either box. If you find yourself in a box, you need to stop and look up and go, wait a minute. This is not me, though. I've said in other episodes, whoever labels you imprisons you. If you register yourself as a Republican, then you are basically saying that this is an ideology that I believe in. This is a party I believe in. And so that's what I'm going to identify as. And so then I'm going to basically die defending that. And that's the same thing as if you call yourself a Democrat. You're saying this is what I believe in. And no matter what the people in that party do, I'm going to die defending that. The moment you put a label on yourself, you imprison yourself. Independents are called independents for a reason. It means that you're free. Hello. Independents are called independents for a reason. To be independent, it means to be free from, not bound to either ideology, to be somewhere in the middle, to live in a space of gray. If you put yourself in the middle, then you don't have something to defend. You don't have an ego to defend. You don't have a persona to defend. You're just looking and you're taking it in and you're judging one side against the other. And it allows you to better see what's happening. I talked about the election coverage channel where I turned on the TV and it said election coverage. On the left side, it had left-wing media. On the right side, it had Fox News and Newsmax. And basically, they were like, choose one. Laid it out like we were dummies, like we were idiots. They literally put the left-wing media on the left, and then they put the right-wing media on the right. And then choose. And now you have to choose. So what they're, even with that action, they're showing you, they're trying to program you into thinking that a middle ground doesn't exist. And you can't be in the middle. That's fucked up. That's problematic. And that's why we have the polarization that we have now, because by definition, it is the media who has polarized us. When you give people only two options and you force them to choose, then you put them on one end or the other. So that people on the right then assume that if you don't think like this, then you must support this. How are you going to, if you don't know what's in my head. You don't know what's in my mind. Don't just assume that because I say this, then I must be that. I am not an ideological clone. I'm a free-thinking human being, and I struggle and I fight on a daily basis to stay conscious, to stay aware, to not be controlled by any labels or anyone's expectations of me or my behavior. Fuck you and your expectations. Don't project your assumptions on me. This happened in 2016. I used to have my Instagram post. So I would post something against Hillary, and then a bunch of people who supported Trump would come on my page saying, yeah, go Trump. And then I would have to say, no, fuck him too. Like, it's not one or the other. It's not one or the other. You're not a clone. You're not a robot. You're supposed to be a human being with free will. I said this in other episodes before, but I'll keep saying it because the repetition eventually sinks in. What I said was, if you identify, let's say you live for 200 years, okay? You called yourself a Republican, okay? And you just said, that's what I am. No matter what happens, I'm always going to vote party ticket, right? And you lived during the time of the Civil War, right? You would have been on the side of people who were fighting, of a party who was fighting for the emancipation of the African American and white American slaves, because it wasn't just black people that were slaves, but that's a whole nother conversation. You hear that? So you would have found yourself on the side of people who wanted slaves to be emancipated. Now somehow you found yourself on the side of people who are walking around holding Confederate flags. You see where that's a problem? Because if you accept if you accept the label, somebody can change the definition of the label, and then you're going to be forced to be changed too. That's a problem. If you accept the label, somebody can change the definition of what it means to be that label, and then you're going to find yourself changed too. That's a problem. So for me, the only label that I can accept for myself is an independent, because that means that I am free. That freedom might be an illusion, but it's better than, it's one step removed from an ideological chain. That freedom might be an illusion, but it's one step removed from an ideological chain. Ideologies blindfold you. It stops you from seeing things from the other person's perspective. If this country is going to unite against what's coming next, and I'm telling you right now, guys, brace yourself, because two things are happening right now. One in the near future and one in the far future. What's happening in the near future, I'm afraid. And what I'm afraid of is the fact, I don't even know if I can say this, but I'm seeing some stuff happening that's causing me to raise my eyebrow. One is that every time Biden gives a speech, he says, God bless our troops. And that's something we haven't heard in a while. We definitely didn't hear that a lot from Trump. And I know it's something that he's just saying that is, I guess, maybe just meant to, incite patriotism or whatever. But that makes me raise an eyebrow. That was just kind of, and when I have a very strong intuition. And when somebody says something that kind of sits with me the wrong way, I pay attention to that. And so of all the things that he said, that recurring God bless our troops thing was one thing that made me raise my eyebrow, because I'm like, shit, what's really going to happen? 2, on 60 Minutes yesterday, a general went on TV and talked about how the vaccines are going to be ready. And I'm like, why is there a general? Why is there a general on television on 60 Minutes? Talking to us, like, it's very calm, very laissez-faire, seems very relatable, but that was another thing that set off my intuition. Okay. I don't know if I even said this on this episode before I start recording. Like, I go through a couple of takes and then I get into a flow. So I don't know if this had been one of the episodes or one of the takes that I deleted. But I said, it's funny because leading up to the debates, Trump kept saying, I have a vaccine. And then at the debates, he said the vaccine's going to be around the corner. And then after the debates happened, all of the vaccine manufacturers were saying that that's not going to happen. It's going to be at least 6 months to a year even before they're ready to go. And then literally as soon as Biden was announced president-elect, the following day you have a general going on TV saying that the vaccines are pretty much ready to go soon. And then today I'm getting spammed by, MSNBC reports saying that the vaccines once again are ready to go, and they are, like 90% effective. That scares me. What I said to my husband is something's going to happen. Well, Americans have to unite. And my fear is that something is going to happen on our land in this country that's going to force us to unite. And I'm just seeing all these things kind of lay out, and everything feels kind of weird to me, and I'm uncomfortable with what I'm observing. And I'm not really going to say too much more on that, except for to say, you guys really pay attention. What's more important to me right now, and the reason why behind this episode is it's a call for unity. And I want you guys to unite. I want us to unite, not under the guidance of the media, but because we sat down with each other and listened to each other outside of the media and talked to each other and try to meet ourselves in the middle. I'm afraid that something's going to happen. I'm concerned. I want to say afraid. I'm concerned, and I hope I'm wrong. But I am concerned that something's going to happen that's going to force Americans to be united. It's going to force Americans to unite. And if if you can read between the lines, then start paying attention, start looking around too. But there's some other things that's happening that, people on the right complain about censorship. And I guess because people on the left want to win, they kind of ignore all of that. But if it can happen to them, right, it could happen to you. If it could happen to people on the right, I'm not saying that, the censorship or whatever was not warranted. I've stumbled across threads of tweets and stuff where I'm reading stuff and I'm like, this is dangerous, So I get it to a certain extent, but I'm seeing people being mobilized in a way that really is very artificial. It's orchestrated, and it's not something that's natural. It's something that's being done by the media. I'm just going to say it. And I'm seeing behavior that's something that's triggered by the media, and that's just an observation. If you pay attention, you can see it too. And my concern is that, okay, so people feel like they've, quote, defeated some evil tyrant just by voting. That right there is a narrative that's being imposed upon you by the media. It is what it is. I'm just calling shit out. You guys need to just let it sink in. Like, let that sink in. Just let what I'm saying sink in, and then keep an eye open. Because there's just some stuff that's happening that I find a little bit more than, more concerning. But unfortunately, what the media has done, they've done a great job of taking the population of people who, let's be real. The people who are more likely to protect the rights of the majority of Americans, or the rest of Americans, right, against fascism, are people on the right. Right? They are the ones, I've said this before, I'll say it again, they're the ones who are more willing to form militias. They're the ones who are more willing to organize. It's just, right now, the media, the right-wing media, Fox News and them, they're the ones who have corralled them and have now weaponized them to behave in a particular way that they literally have found themselves defending a fascist. And I'm not using that term fascist lightly. I've said before, and I'll say it again, go and read Mein Kampf. If you haven't read it yet, go and read Mein Kampf. Everything that Trump has done, is so unscripted, it's not even funny. It was taken straight out of the book. And so you have people on the right who are unknowingly, in their minds, they think that they're defending this person who's this maverick that's going to, that is making changes, but they're being used as a monkey paw. So a person, I have an episode about this, about the demonization of conspiracy theorists and free thinkers. So now if you have a conspiracy theory that is probable, what the media on the left has effectively done is demonize people who have conspiracy theories, who think outside the box, who question the narrative. They've been demonized. That's a problem. Okay? So the people who are more likely to say, you got to defend the Second Amendment, which is true. Because if somebody's trying to take your gun away from you, if somebody's trying to take your rights to defend yourself away from you, it's because they intend to do you harm. This is true. This should not be controversial. This is true. But those people who think that and believe that, they are being demonized by the very same people who need the protection of those people. That is dangerous. And until people on the right look up and go, fuck, people on the left hate us and they think we are this and they think we are that. If you guys don't clarify, for some reason you're listening to me and you have a right, quote, right, and I put right in quotes, right? But if you have a right-leaning temperament or perception, you need to understand how the media is painting you. You are literally being demonized. This is going to be a long episode, but I'm wrapping up. There's a couple more things. I just want to throw it all on there because I don't want to keep talking about politics if I can help it, although I feel like I won't be able to help it. So it is what it is. But this is really important. Take control of the narrative. If you're on the right listening to me, thank you. But at some point, you need to take control of the narrative and start meeting people in the middle. Being diplomatic. Because you guys are being demonized. And since we're forced into factions here, each faction is going to need to work together for the common good. Each faction, people on the left, you want to point the fingers and call these people, racists and bigots and rednecks and all of that stuff. At a certain point, you need to understand that those are the ones that would protect us should the government try anything shady. And I'm sorry if I don't trust a career politician. But it is what it is, guys. There is still a military-industrial complex here. The same military-industrial complex that Kennedy warned us about before somebody put a bullet through his head. That's still there, guys. At some point, stop waiting for the media to tell us to unite. At some point, you need to find somebody on the left and talk to them. Not fight with them, not debate with them. Talk to them. Your reflection is still you. I'm going to break down, the reason why I keep mentioning Mein Kampf is very simple. I want to break down why did people vote for Trump? Simple. Mein Kampf, right there. He spoke directly to your fears. And maybe this should be an episode unto itself. I'm not even sure. Maybe, because I know that maybe I think I'll leave that to be an episode unto itself. I'm not sure yet. But I want to say this. He spoke directly to people's fears. You know what? No, I'm just going to say it in this episode. If you listen this far, then you're clearly interested in what I have to say. He spoke directly to people's fears. Yeah, actually, if you can listen to Joe Rogan talk about, whatever for 3-4 hours, you can listen to the facts that I'm dropping right now because the stuff I'm talking about is very important. So listen. Okay? He spoke directly to people's fears. Go and read Mein Kampf. The reason why he kept saying socialism, communism was because he needed votes from Florida. And the people in the Latinos in Florida are afraid of living in a communist and socialist country. That is what they left their life to come here for. You heard the passion in my voice when I talked about having to live in a home surrounded by walls with barbed wire on the top and a security guard. You don't leave your homeland, your native land, to go to a whole nother continent only to see that same shit happen again. That is a fear. You heard that concern in my voice. That's why I voted against Trump. That is why these people voted against Biden, because Trump told them that there are people in his party that want to see the same thing you left your native land for happen in this country. They voted according to their interests. That doesn't make them bad people. It makes them fucking human. You need to sit with this. Then he went to poor communities that have been hit hard by, not even poor communities, he went to communities, period, who have been hit hard by coronavirus. And he talked to people who have lost their jobs or are afraid of losing their jobs. And he told them that this virus isn't as deadly as the media will let you believe. And he spoke to their fear. These people are afraid of COVID. It doesn't make them stupid. It makes them human. And he basically led them to believe that if should he become president again, that the virus will go away, that he'll have it handled. And more importantly, you will not have to shut your business down. You will not have to lose your job. That's what these people voted for. It wasn't because they didn't choose him because he was a white supremacist. They ignored that shit because for them, being able to make a living was more important. That's something that was more prevalent for them, pressing for them. So that was the choice that they make. These are not bad people. These are people voting according to their interests. You listening to this right now, if you are centrist or left-leaning and you voted for Biden, and you didn't choose Biden, you know you have your reasons for why you voted for him. It's not because you liked him as a person. It's not even that you think he's a great statesman. He's no Obama. You had your choices. Demonize me all you want to and call me a Trump supporter apologist. I don't give a fuck. And I said that very, I eloquated that as best as I could. I really don't care because it doesn't make what I have to say any less true. And the reason why the polls were skewed was because a lot of people were ashamed of their votes. I'll say this again. The reason why the polls were skewed was because a lot of the people who voted for him were ashamed of their vote. That is something tangible that you can hold on to, that they were ashamed of their vote. Doesn't make them bad people. A bad person would not feel shame. A bad person, if you want to really believe that those 70 million people were all bad, then they would not have been ashamed of their vote. You need to focus on that. You need to focus on that. That is a point where you can at least start. That's a foundation in which you can at least start building up. Whether or not they might admit it to themselves doesn't matter. The ego is at play, right? It's going to protect itself. It's going to be defensive. It's going to double down. But that doesn't mean that 70 million people were bad people. Were there people who voted for him simply because he spoke directly to white supremacists? Yes. That's not all 70 million people. I'm not an apologist. I'm a realist. I'm telling you, this is human nature. I didn't read the books that you've heard me chronicle and name throughout this podcast. I don't read books on philosophy for no reason. I don't read books on psychology for no reason. I don't read books on spirituality for no reason. I'm telling you, this is true. These are facts. And most importantly, like I said, everything he did was textbook. He found a different group and spoke directly to their fears, spoke to the people in Florida who were immigrants, spoke to their fear of communism and socialism, spoke to people who were afraid of losing their businesses and shutting down and losing their jobs, or who have already lost their business, and told them the virus, is nothing to worry about. Don't let it dominate their life. Well, he was the only person saying that. He was, whether or not it was true, whether or not it was irresponsible, it doesn't matter. People were afraid, and he was the only one saying that. So that's why they voted for him. What saved America, and it might almost be too soon to even say that, but I think what saved America from the immediacy of our civilization crumbling was the fact that the veneer in which Trump had no veneers, right? So he just was like an unlikable person. But this can happen again if we don't learn from this. Imagine somebody using Hitler's tactics as has been laid out in Mein Kampf, which is literally speak to people's fears, amplify those fears, present yourself to an answer as an answer, right, to that fear, as a solution to that fear, and then just repeat it. Blame other people but yourself. Blame other people but the people who are supporting you, and then just repeat that shit over and over and over and over again. Imagine that package in a person that was actually charismatic, a person that was actually good looking, a person that was actually personable. That could very well still happen. It's a very simple playbook. Speak directly to people's fear. Because if I can use your fear against you, I can control you. All right? Are you afraid of COVID? I'll tell you, there's nothing to be afraid of. I'm going to make it go away. Right? If you're afraid of socialism, I can tell you, there's nothing to be afraid of. I'm going to make socialism go away. If you're afraid of, whatever it is that you're afraid of, if a person presents themselves and themselves alone as a solution to that problem and to your fear, you're going to support them. That's what happened with Hitler. And that's why Trump used his tactics. And the way history works, it's like 3 times, right? Something else is going to happen. Maybe not in our lifetime. Maybe in our lifetime where somebody takes that same playbook and repeats it. Unless we learn from it. Unless we learn from it. I said a lot this episode, probably one of my longer episodes, but I really hope that you did take the time to listen all the way through. Just because somebody has an opposing viewpoint than you doesn't mean that they're bad people. And their viewpoints might be brought on by the same programming that you have been subjected to your whole life. And they're not bad people, they're a victim of programming. And you need to understand that. And if you could start with that and put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself, if I were in their circumstances and whatever it is, how would I behave? What would I think? That's where you start. That's how we start uniting this country, because something is coming. And we will need to unify without the guidance of the media, because if the media is uniting people, just the way the way the media divided people, it was to their benefit. If the media is going to go out of its way to unite the people, it's also going to be for their benefit. If the politicians are going to unite the people, just like they went around dividing people because it made us easier to control. Think about it. People are saying like the vote was almost 50-50, almost half. Yeah. If we weren't divided, it would have been like, let's say 30-30-30, right? There would have been somewhere in the middle. But it was like almost down the middle. Half over here, half over here. That is the definition of polarized. And those numbers didn't come accidentally. Just like on that channel I told you where, CNN and NBC was on the left, and then Newsmax and Fox News on the right. There was nothing in the middle, and so you have to choose. Those numbers show you that the media has been effective in splitting Americans literally down the middle. Either or, choose one by force. If they now are going to seek to unite us, and you're going to keep seeing more and more of this, It's not going to be something under our control, and it's going to be to their benefit. It's not going to be to us. And I don't mean just the news. You're going to see it on television. You're going to see it in commercials. You're going to see it in, corporations going to try to take advantage of that. Don't let them have that kind of power to control the way we experience reality. If we're going to unite, let us take control of that. Not because we've been programmed, because if you allow the media to program you, right, to behave, okay, so they wanted us to be divided, now we're divided. Now all of a sudden they're going to go, okay, we want you to unite. And I'm sure they're going to find a way to unite. But then what? Now you're showing them that if they want to make people behave in one way, this is what works. We become the subjects of an experiment that a very small group of people are running. And not just nationally, but internationally. Somebody told me the same thing happened in London during Brexit, that the country became super polarized. And we watched that shit from over here like, that's too bad. And then it happened to us. I'm not trying to say that there's a hidden hand or anything, but it kind of looks like there's, who's controlling the bird?